This boat belongs to a customer of mine. It's a 2004 Hurricane deck boat, a 201 FunDeck to be exact. It had been sitting for quite some time, apparently under a pine tree, and had shown the effects of just being neglected. When he brought it to me, I did a little test area to see how the oxidation was on the gel coat, and after using a couple different products, I was pretty confident that it could look nice again. It was just going to need quite a bit of love. The decals were pretty rough, with the port side being worse than the starboard side, so I'm guessing that had most of the sun on that side. And I was going to try to preserve them as best as I could, but he said that if it was really bad, he was just going to end up replacing them anyway. To me, it had lots of potential. It had a really strong 115 horsepower Yamaha 4-stroke outboard, but I could also tell just by walking around when I smelled the stale gasoline that it probably hadn't been used in years. It needed a good cleaning before I could get to doing any other work, so I just kind of walked around and took stock of what I was getting myself into. Incidentally, I always get myself into things like this. I have this knack of trying to find the bright side in everything, but actually I knew that if it was polished up, and incidentally it did have new batteries, if it was polished up and the fuel was drained out of it and the filters were replaced and all the electronics were replaced and the lighting was redone, basically it would be a good boat. Also, all the upholstery needs to be redone, but it did have a stereo. As I was completing my walk around, I kind of knew what I was getting myself into. The gel coat looked to be pretty good, but it was definitely weathered and needed to be compounded, then polished, and then I was going to follow it up with a ceramic sealant. I don't know how well the decals were going to fare, but I could also tell the last time it was legally registered to run was 3 years ago, so everything was probably kind of neglected. As you can see, the docking lights don't look so hot. It does have a trolling motor, and the trailer itself was in pretty good shape. I noticed that all of the scuppers were obstructed with pine needles and other debris and junk, and once I unclogged the one in the back and the garboard drain plug, it ran for about 5 minutes.
This has been running for 5 minutes.
I fired up the power washer, and then I needed to fantail everything that was in the boat just so I could get to it and start cleaning. As you can see, the interior needed some love. There were, I think, 12 cushions. And what makes them really expensive to replace or repair or rebuild, I guess, is the fact that they're all curved. Hurricane deck boats are notorious for having curves everywhere, and all that really is expensive when you take it to an upholsterer. I mean, the foam and the vinyl alone and the thread that's used to stitch it, they use the thread called Tanara thread. It's, a couple $1,000s just in materials. So even though you might get a good deal on the boat, the stuff that you're doing is expensive. Here you can see I used products from Shine Supply. I used a heavy cut compound, and I followed it up with Chop Top, and then ultimately put Jescar Power Lock on it, which is a sealant that just really brings up the depth and everything. I polished it up as best as I could. I don't know how well the decals are going to hold up, but that's not my decision. And you can see that it really brought back a lot of depth in the reflection and the color of the gel coat. So basically, I think it looks about as good as it can look. I used Goof Off and a heat gun and a razor blade and got a lot of the pinstriping off, and you can see there's kind of like the ghost stripe underneath of it, which doesn't really look that bad, but it really took a lot of effort to get everything off there. But the gel coat looks pretty good, and it's got a good reflection in it and good depth of color. I don't know if the customer is going to want to redo the pinstriping on the side, but it's looking pretty good, I think. Incidentally, I polished all of the bright work, the stainless steel rails, with bronze wool and semi-chrome polish. I had never even heard of bronze wool before I bought a boat, but stainless steel wool or steel wool will cause rust, so you have to use bronze wool, but it gets it nice and shiny. The lower part of the hull came out nice as well, and walking all around it really, I was pretty pleased with the results. This type of a boat is great for where we live. If you go into the intercoastal or go to the sandbars, you can just beach it, and it's got a really low draft, just a couple feet, and you can get in and out of all sorts of areas. And it's got a front and rear boarding ladder, and typically it's kind of a party boat. Here's another look at that bright work that polished up with the semi-chrome and the bronze wool. Came out nice. Here's a shot of the dash area. It polished up pretty nicely, but I think the customer is probably going to want to replace some of the gauges and electronics because they're pretty old and not functioning. All of the topside areas polished up pretty nicely. And the seating areas were polished as well, but they're going to be covered with new upholstery. All of the compartments were cleaned out and everything was polished and then coated with the ceramic coating. A lot of the cup holders and things like that could be replaced. Just little maintenance items, but that's up to the customer. All the compartments came out nice and clean. All the scuppers and drains were unclogged, and everything looks pretty good. It would be nice to see this with all of the new upholstery, but that's perhaps for a later video. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe. I appreciate all the support. See ya.